Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Get the Shot, brought to you by Tamron Australia. My name is Joe Orchard. I am your host. Today I've got Matt, Irwin, legendary photographer, YouTuber, author. There's all sorts of stuff that you do, tech reviews. You get your hands on cameras like no one else. Matt, thank you for coming on the show.
It's a pleasure, Joe. Thanks for having me here.
You focus a lot on like cities and skylines and street photography. Where did all of that come from?
It basically came from the fact that I was a teenager a little while ago, and I'm like, well, what am I going to photograph? And you know, as a kid, you drive around with your parents in the car, and you look at, you're looking out the window, and you're going, this is a cool city. And it was the 80s, and there was a gentleman, a photographer by the name of Steve Parrish, that some of your older viewers, and do you know that name?
I don't.
You don't. Check him out.
Okay.
And he was a photographer who would go to, and I think he's still around. I'm not sure he's publishing anymore, but he would go to Sydney, Melbourne, Adelaide in the middle of the day. He would shoot in the bright sunlight, and then he'd put out postcards. And I'm like, this is not really telling the story of Melbourne. I see Melbourne, at night, in the rain, in the fog. It's got all these moods. It's got all these little hidden secrets all over the place. And so that kind of,
if it wasn't telling the story of Melbourne, what story was it telling?
The story of the sun at 12 o'clock midday.
Okay.
And the Yarra River and Flinders Street Station. But it wasn't Steve that made me start shooting. It was Steve that made me start publishing.
Okay.
And that happened 5 years or more after I started shooting. It was just literally, for me, it was like I saw it, and I seemed to have a cinematic eye, and I was like, I just have to capture it. Like it was, and it still happens today. I'll see something and it's screaming at me, you better capture this or it might disappear. It looks beautiful. And it honestly was just...
So you're quite an impulsive photographer, you'd say?
Yeah, well, so there's my commercial work, which is obviously, you're working for a client and they tell you what they're after.
Yeah.
And but for my personal work, which is actually made up, probably something like 70% of my income across the 4 decades I've been doing this, it's about following the light, following the mood, following the weather. And I'll be driving around or riding my bike or whatever, and I'll see a scene, and I'll go, okay, that's a good shot, but I need to come back at night, or I need to come back when it's raining. And so these days, because I've been doing it so long and I've been crisscrossing this same city, I actively go out location hunting now. And what's been more fun than ever in the last few years is the electrification of bikes and scooters, because a city is big, and people say, well, why don't you walk around? It's like, you know how big Melbourne is. If you walked around Melbourne, it'd take you forever. So what it allows you to do is, and also what's interesting about bikes and scooters and so on, is you can kind of go down little laneways, and you can go over little footbridges, and you can go places that a car can't go. And you can also, let's say you're on a road here and it's a really busy road, and you drive over on your car, you can't just stop and get out and take a photo. Whereas if you're on your bike, you can just stop and take a photo. So luckily for me, that's added a whole new kind of experience and opportunity for finding locations. So finding locations is a big part of what I do. And yeah, I'm actively pursuing new things, and luckily the city keeps changing. And so my first book, which was, I was like, for a year, I'm like, what am I going to call this book? It's a photographic book about 25 years of photographing Melbourne. It's a coffee table book. You open it up and it's almost a metre wide. And in the end, I decided, Melbourne, a love affair, because it's my love affair.
I've got that written down on my notes.
There you go. Yeah. It's about my love affair with this city and the fact that I've explored it and tried to, understand every kind of nook and cranny and every emotion and mood and for a very, very long time. So I forgot where I was going with that, but yes.
No, well, I'll continue on that idea with the book and a love affair, because it brings up this idea of like romance and sort of a cinematic style to it, like you mentioned earlier. Why did you choose to go a love affair and like that sort of romantic angle?
Oh, well, the title was not about romance as in romantic love. It was love as in I'm passionate about the city.
Yeah.
And there was no, the book is a collection of 200 images across 25 years. There was no plan at the start that I'm going to make this book. I just started by going, like 15, 16-year-old, I've got my Pentax K1000, I jump on my bike, I start riding towards Station Pier along the bay, and I go, oh, that looks very interesting, I want to take a shot. And it was on film, and I used to roll my own film and process my own film, and then I had my own darkroom for the first 15 years of my photography at home. And it was literally just a passion and a pastime. Like, that's all it was. And then by the time I was 18, 19, friends said, I love your stuff. Can you print some big ones and frame it up for me? And I'm going to put it in my room, my living room or whatever. And so that's how it started. And then I thought, well, how do I sell this stuff? And then I worked out how to monetize it, which was through going to markets and greeting cards and postcards and posters and then calendars and then books. And I opened my first gallery in 2001.
It's interesting how many photographers and videographers end up becoming salesmen. You sort of have to as well to book new clients as well.
Yep.
What do you say to the photographer who doesn't really like the sales side of things?
Well, I didn't. I was standing at my market, 19 years of age, at my market stall in Greville Street in Prahran, and a buyer for David Jones came up to me. So, and this is 30 whatever years ago, and he says, these are just beautiful. If these were cards and postcards, we would sell them in David Jones. So I went and got a second job selling insurance on the telephone, which was the last. I'm 19, right? It's the last thing I wanted to do, but I'm like, I'm gonna get my cards and postcards in David Jones. So I saved up the money. I rang up Hallmark and I said to Hallmark, how does card publishing work? And they said, well, you will get 10% of the sale of the wholesale price of the card after costs. Okay, so a card was $2.95, wholesale's $1.50. After costs, there's like $1.05, and you'll get 10% of that. And I'm like, okay, 10% of that is like 10 cents. And I then said, how many do you sell? And they said 2,000. And I'm like, okay, so I'm going to make about $200 from my artwork, at which point in time I already thought it was awesome. So I thought, no, I'm going to self-publish. So from that time, I self-published and continued to self-publish and still do to this day because of Hallmark. And it's the same in publishing. If someone else publishes, they if it's successful, they're the ones that profit out of it. Now there's an immense. I mean, this can we talk about where we are?
Yeah.
So, a Blonde Robot understands this, that, to sell and distribute a product, which I do the same. I have to sell and distribute my own book. It's a massive business. Just the warehousing, the sales people, the logistics, the warranties, the return, the whole thing, And so, but I did all that for my books and my cards, and I had sales staff and all, the whole kit and caboodle. I have my own warehouse, much smaller than this one, but I still have one.
Good.
Yeah.
I know a lot of your work nowadays consists of like your YouTube and doing a lot of tech reviews and stuff like that. Do you still spend time working on print media and printing your works and that sort of stuff?
So over the years, I've owned, I don't know, maybe 5 large format Epson pigment ink printers, which allow us to print archival grade prints. And the biggest component of my business for about 20, 25 years was selling prints. So first I used to print them in the darkroom by hand. So they were wet prints. So anyone who actually has a print from the 90s, that's me hand printing in a darkroom, chemical printing. And then from 2000-ish onwards, it was inkjet printing. They are inkjet technology, but they're way better than
Whatever that means.
Yes,
Yeah.
whatever. Yes, the industry came up with a word which is giclée, which is a French word which means fine droplet, and that's what. So we say giclée printing. But Epsons say the archivalness of the images is like 300 years, and so that's the technology I've been working with. I think I bought my first one in like 2002 or something like that. I went 17 inch, it's like, oh, I got to go bigger, 24 inch, oh, I got to go bigger, 44 inch, and then finally a 64 inch. So I had a printer that was 64 inches wide, so that was the short edge. So I was, at my heyday, I was printing prints that were 2.5 meters by, 1.4 meters, something like that.
Goodness me.
Yeah. And then they would largely canvas prints, so stretched because they're so big, but some paper prints as well. So an immense amount of time, like I had a team, there was me and a couple of other people, we would print and frame and stretch, and I was selling to something like 10 galleries in the noughties and into the tens a little bit. But the industry just kept changing, and somewhere in the late teens, the world didn't, a lot of the galleries that I sold to, they shut down, and obviously tastes and trends changed. And that's how the trends keep changing, and they change faster now than they ever have.
Totally.
Yeah.
If it means anything, there's a lot of business analyst people who are suggesting that events and live spaces are actually becoming more popular, and there's a potential resurgence of this. And it evidently has been a big theme on our podcast, talking about print and exhibition, physical photos in a book or on a wall.
Yeah.
Compared to on someone's social media feed or on a website. And there's a connection with the in-person photos that just isn't there with the photos.
Well, I totally agree. And in the digital space, we are saturated. Like we are just, we all do it. We can scroll through, 75 amazing photographs in the space of a minute. And it's just completely devalued it. And what's interesting to me is, it's not an upsell to say the bigger a photograph gets, the better it looks. That's not an upsell. It might depend on what you shoot, but with what I shoot, which is sort of urban landscapes and cityscapes, mostly, like I shoot all sorts of stuff, but you really can kind of be there and immerse yourself. But if the print's this big, it's a bit harder. But as they get bigger, so I totally agree. And I saw the writing on the wall, which is why I published my first book in 2011, because I was like, things are going to change, and we need to have these sort of these physical artifacts. And that book has been very successful. I've actually basically sold out of it and need to decide whether I'm making a second one, which is amazing because I sold out 10,000 of them.
Fantastic.
That's a lot of books.
Yeah. You've done a Sydney one as well, haven't you?
I have, yeah.
Did you like the Sydney one as much as the Melbourne one?
Yeah, for sure. I basically would travel up to Sydney almost every year for 25 years. And it was much harder to do because I don't live there. But I actually think photographically it's a better book because it came later in my career. Like it's about 5 or 6 years younger, and it was a little bit of so the first Melbourne book has got a lot more imagery that's pre-digital, and it's got a lot of imagery that's early digital. Whereas by the time I was doing the Sydney book, digital is really matured. And you're not fighting as much to make the gear say what you want to say. It's just doing it for you. Whereas in the early days of digital, it's like, okay, I'm really pushing ISOs and I'm pushing everything's being pushed to the absolute limit, and now I want to blow it up to A3, but it's only 6 megapixels. Okay, we're pushing that. Whereas by the time we get to 2017, which is where some shots in the Sydney book are from, I think I was shooting on a 36 megapixel camera by then. 2012 is when the first one of those came out. Yeah, and I even shot with my 60 megapixel medium format Hasselblad.
Okay.
As well, so I took that to Sydney. There's a few shots in there from that, but it's a tough camera to shoot with.
What's your relationship with camera technology? Because you've got the YouTube channel now where you do tech reviews.
Yep.
You've talked a lot about printing, digital film, all that sort of stuff. How's it changed over the years?
As in the technology we work with,
Well,
or my relationship with it.
your relationship with it.
Well, luckily for me, I'm a massive nerd. So I was a computer nerd before I was a photographer. So when I was like 11, I was already had my parents decided to get like the Apple II, which is like the second Apple or the first Apple.
I finished Steve Jobs' book not too long ago. I'm familiar with the history here.
Good work. And I was programming BASIC, and even prior to that, a friend of mine got a. This will pull some people out of their nostalgia. The Tandy. There was a company called Tandy. They're like Dick Smith, and they made a camera a computer called the TRS-80, which didn't even have a storage. So you sit down, turn it on, type in your program, play whatever you programmed, and then when you turn it off, it's gone. And this is like, I don't know, 1980. But anyway, by 1981, I had my own computer, and so I was always a nerd, loved computers. I was actually doing animations by 1983, 84 on the Apple II in a piece of software called Take One. And this was happening at the same time as I was starting to get interested in cameras and filmmaking, because I was actually probably more interested in filmmaking than I was in photography. And the only reason I took the photography path was because photography was easier to do than filmmaking. Because back in the 80s, a film camera and film was extraordinarily expensive, and video cameras were very, very low quality. So it's not like today where you can spend, I don't know, $2,000 and be shooting 4K.
Yeah.
Like, it's bananas how much it's changed. And I've always been very, very comfortable with everything that's happened with cameras in the last 25 years and the digital. And just give me more. I get really pumped by, this is a stacked sensor, a partially stacked sensor, a global sensor, and it's all that stuff. Like I can nerd out till you go glassy-eyed and fall asleep.
No, I love it. That's good. Yeah.
No, I'm massive nerd. Love computers. Very comfortable around all the technical side of thing, and I think it's an important part of being a photographer is that you're both left brain and right brain. So you're technical brain and creative brain.
Yeah, left brain, right brain, absolutely. Tell me what your experience with this is though, because...
Oh, well, so if there's a technical challenge, I've got no problem facing into it, and whether you do your research, and I can solve a lot of issues myself. And then when it comes to, I feel extraordinarily lucky that the creative side of my brain never stops. People say they have writer's block or a creative drought or whatever. It's never been a problem for me. And I don't say that from an ego perspective. I don't know. There's always something.
I'm like that, but where my problem is, it's focus. And so I'll be this far on one thing, and then another thing will come up. So I'm getting that creative stimulus, and that's all feeling like really good and exciting. But then project A slows down for me to develop project B, C, all the way to Z, and then suddenly project A is kind of sometimes gone.
Just disappears.
Or the quality drops massively, or whatever it may be. So,
well, there is a third component, which is discipline,
yeah.
And that's a critical part of small business. It's a critical part of YouTubing. It's a critical part of photography. So you don't have any of these things working unless you can stay at the anvil until the job is done. And I've definitely, and I don't know where that trait comes from. I know what fuels it, and that is I'm excited. I get excited to see the finished product. When I'm making a YouTube video, I'm first banking it for myself. So, when I'm cutting it and I'm putting the music in there and I'm wanting it to flow and draw people in, I'm doing it for myself. And then I'm really excited to have that finished artifact, and it's it's polished, and I can hand it to you, and you can look at it and you can pick it up and go, I completely understand what this is all about. I'm now excited. This artifact is impacting me in a positive way. And I suppose that's what I've always wanted to do, is create artifacts that impact people in a positive way. So whether that's a book, you flick through the book and you go, I know that spot, and yeah, wow, oh, that's interesting light, and whatever. Yes, so it's that strong desire to be able to hand over, and whether you're handing it to yourself or to another, because yes. So the moment you stop being excited yourself, is probably the scary moment. But I don't think that'll ever happen for me. I think I will die with a camera in my hand.
Okay.
Yeah, and that would be good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of YouTube, you've been at it for over 10 years. You've got 121,000 subscribers. Where did that all begin for you?
Yeah. So the first things I posted were actually, I used YouTube as, like a lot of businesses do, just for marketing. So it wasn't really about being a YouTuber, it was just about that being a server to put video on. And so the first few videos were originally about my calendar or about my book and so on. And I, like everybody else, when a new camera came out, I'd jump on Google and say, reviews on the new Nikon D4 or whatever. And there was a year where suddenly it wasn't just websites anymore. It would start to feed you YouTube. I was like, oh, what's YouTube? What's this thing? And so from about 2012 or something like that onwards, I was watching YouTube reviews, and there's a handful of very famous channels that were there at the start, that almost everybody that's been watching, we all know who those people are. And by about 2016 or 2017, I kind of went, you know what, I think I've got something to say that's different. At that point in time, I'd been in the industry for almost 30 years, professional, self-publishing, running my own galleries, printing all the things we've talked about. So I think I've got something different to say. So I sort of started putting out a few videos in 2016, but I only went full tilt in 2019, because when you start, you have no idea how often do you need to post to get traction, and what are people, how are people going to respond? I mean, it's pretty crazy, the idea of making a video, posting it, you've got no subscribers, and you get 100 views or 5 views or whatever. I can't even remember how many views my first videos got.
But that's a relatable story to anyone who's posting.
Yeah. Everybody's in the same boat. Yeah. Everybody's in the same boat. And so it takes a few years to kind of work it out. But then, after a few years, it was like, okay, I want to post 2 or 3 times a week, and that's the cadence. And so that decision was made. And at the time, I had my gallery in the city, and I had a team member who was running that gallery. And in his downtime, I trained him how to do some of the editing. So he was maybe editing a third or half of the videos. But then COVID came along the year later, but we both worked from home, and I would shoot the videos and I would send him basically proxy footage, and he would edit from home. And so that went on for a couple of years, and by 2022 we came out of COVID. I don't know if you remember, but the city of Melbourne was a disaster area.
Yeah.
And so we couldn't keep the doors open because we were getting like 10% of the people that used to come through. So I had to shut that. Unfortunately, I had to let him go. From 2022 onwards, it's 100% me, and I can't even remember the question you asked now.
No, that's answering it. I was asking about your experience with YouTube, but do you like the fact that since then and still now, it's you doing it 100%?
I am like James Cameron. I'm a control freak, and he's in there with the camera, and he's in there in the edit suite. I'm the same, but it is a lot of work.
Yeah,
it's like I could, maybe I'm spending 50 or 60 hours a week. So, and a lot of that is like after hours. You're working late, and the crazy thing is you're just doing that day after day, year after year. And
You didn't become a photographer to make YouTube videos, though. That's
God, no. No, I mean, it didn't exist.
So how did you find your flow and inspiration to keep going?
Oh, that's a great question. How did I find my flow and my inspiration? Look, it's a funny space because to begin with, it's just speculative, right? You're doing things, you're hoping to get traction, you get traction, and the creators of YouTube and the algorithm are very smart. Things will be going slow, and then every now and again, and this is when you're little, you might have 1,000 subscribers, then you get 30,000 views on a video, and you go, oh wow, well I better keep at it, and so you do. So there's just enough kind of I don't know, stimulus or hope that it's going to turn into something, and if you keep working at it, it does. But I have a lot of friends, and I've met a lot of people from all around the world, and everybody's experience is a little bit different. Excuse me, and we're all doing slightly different things, and the amount of effort that people put in is different, and but there's no magic answers to it. The only thing I would say is you have to be consistent. YouTube is very hard on you if you don't post for longer than about 7 or 8 days. And if you don't post for 2 weeks, that has an impact. I've only done that once, and it has an impact, and you've got to come back from that.
Unless you're Mark Rober, who posts 12 videos a year.
Well, yeah, he's special. There's a few special channels, and Mr. Beast is slowed down and so on, but they are, they're ordained, basically. But YouTube's changing, and I don't know how aware you are of what's been going on, but and I made a video about it recently, actually, which is there's 4 times more YouTubers now than when I started. So when I started, there was 30,000. Now there's 125,000.
Really?
Yep. But the revenue pie has not increased to match the creators.
Right.
And so if you're running a business and you go we used to have 10 employees and we made $10, so you all have $1 each. Well, now we have 40 employees, but we only have $15. So now you're all getting 30 cents or whatever the maths is. And sorry, but that's what this business is, and that's what that business is. And the other issue that's happening is they do, and I call it ordain, they do ordain some channels, so they stay successful and they continue to make their revenue and get their views, but everybody else is just sharing from that same pie that isn't growing at the same rate as...
It's interesting, though, that you mentioned those ordained channels, because it's actually healthy for the platform that big channels are watched and stuff like that, because that's where most of the ad revenue, which will go to YouTube themselves, will come from. So if you created a new channel on an incognito tab and just auto played, I think within 3 videos a Mr. Beast one will come on. Right. Because when that gets views and that does well, that's where YouTube will actually earn more revenue. And that's, Mark Rober, all the Minecraft YouTubers, all those really, really big things. So weirdly enough, once you get to a really big state, YouTube wants to keep you at a big position so they can also keep earning revenue at the same time.
Well, the way that I see that is essentially they're just another network. They're another Netflix. They're another whatever, and so they've got their hot properties. Like if you own Paramount, you've got Star Trek. If you own Netflix, you had House of Cards to begin with, and whatever else they had. And these are the properties that brought people in. Well, they've got their properties, and it is the people that you're talking about. So absolutely, they have to protect those properties. And everybody else fits in the old YouTube model, which is, this is a great space to come for, homegrown, let's call it homegrown content, and all the rest of us still live by the old rules, but there's less pie. We're sharing amongst way more people, perhaps a diminished pie. So, what the and thus ultimately the way channels need to survive is to have relationships with others.
Yep.
And if you even before things started to change, if you talk to any YouTuber, they would, or plenty of them will make videos like this. They tell you how much money they make or whatever. So many people make these videos, but anyway, they must be successful. And they would always say that AdSense, which is what we're talking about, everybody, we're talking about AdSense, was the smallest component of their income, and it would be under 10%. And it has to be, merch or sponsorship deals, training videos, products, training in person, and that's what you've got to build. But that's hard. And I'm a person who had all that stuff beforehand. So luckily, I have been able to sell.
You can transfer those skills. Yeah.
Yeah, I can transfer the skills. Plus, I had products like books and things to sell, which have sold. I now sell books all over the world. Strangely, people buy. Well, not strangely. It's fantastic. But people buy Melbourne and Sydney books from Germany, from France, from India, all over the world. Lots from America. That definitely would not have happened without YouTube. So, there's a funny story once where I decided to make a video in my warehouse, and I was talking about something else, but I was jacketing my books because my book has 4 different jackets on it, and one sells more than the other 3, and I was changing the jackets. And the jackets that I had too many of were this special orange jacket. It's just orange, and it's one that the only way to get it is for me to give it to you. You can't buy it. It doesn't exist on my website. Anyway, because the book was basically almost finished in its decade-long run, I just talked about the fact that there's this very special orange book, and anyway, suddenly, and I said, look, it's time for me to get rid of this book. I'm going to offer the orange book for sale, and suddenly I had 100 orders, and that was $10,000 worth of books, just from saying that in a video as an aside. It wasn't even what the video was about. So, as a marketing funnel, it can be very powerful, but then you go and repeat that again and it doesn't happen again. So,
yeah, I used to shoot street interviews. So talking about what surprises you and things going weird. I'd basically, from a day of shooting, know, I think this interview, once edited, is going to do really well. I know this interview, not quite, but there's like one answer that will edit well into a montage. Yeah. So that's sort of fine. But then, no matter what, there was always a surprise interview from there. Yeah. One that I thought was going to do well, that doesn't, or one that was crap, that ended up doing really well, and it just connected with people. And it's good that it connected with people, but it's also fine that I didn't connect with it. Yeah. It's actually like finding the balance there, and it also comes back to what you were saying about discipline and persistence as well as an extension of that.
Well, YouTube's all about, you've just got to keep experimenting. Like every now and again, I'll do something weird, like a different transition or whatever, and people will complain. And my response often is, look, YouTube tell us to keep messing it up and keep experimenting, and that's what I'm doing. And that is what I'm doing. It's also, I do it for myself because I get bored. Yeah, so I want to mess around in the edit and play with stuff.
We talked about that here a lot with our podcast. So we will have like B-roll going over the top. So when you're talking about the orange cover, I'll probably have a section of that video over the top. Absolutely. But it might be you on one half of the screen and then that video on the other half there. Or the B-roll might cover the entire screen. Yeah. And so
mess it up, man.
Exactly. We have to do that. And I know personally I'll just get sick and tired of, insanity is doing the same thing over and over.
Oh God, yeah. You can't just have results. I hope this isn't just our two talking heads. I hope there's some flying elephants and I don't know, whatever else.
It wasn't, my idea was to start the podcast, but someone in the marketing team just said you need to have photos overlaying of the photographers as they're saying it, because otherwise, like, seeing the photo itself does way more than the description of the photo.
Totally.
And so it just was like this light bulb moment of absolutely. And we don't actually post this anywhere other than YouTube, because on Spotify, people aren't really using the video feature.
Right.
Much as you'd think.
I didn't even know they had a video feature.
They developed the video feature when they signed on Joe Rogan.
Oh.
Because his was a mostly viewed video thing. And so that is now accessible to all users. And because YouTube's also the #1 podcasting platform. which is strange to think about. It's this whole idea of second monitor content.
Mm-hmm.
So you have that playing whilst you're doing your spreadsheets or whatever it might be.
I do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
One of your videos.
Yeah. yeah, I watch myself. No.
But so Spotify wanted to engage in that space and have a video feature, and so musicians can do their music videos as well.
Yeah.
And you can have video podcasts. So we put it up there, and no one was really engaging with it because still people were using Spotify in their cars on the way to work or at the gym or whatever it may be.
I mean, I don't think of Spotify for podcasts at all. I think of it for music.
Yeah.
And their marketing. Sorry, your marketing hasn't got through to me.
Yeah.
I'm not very good at watching marketing.
No, I work in marketing, so I have to look into it. But
got to try harder.
I still get it wrong. Yeah. Let's get back to photography.
Yeah.
You've got your YouTube and you still take photos. What balance is it? Are you still 50-50 on both of them, or what occupies more time?
Do you mean as a commercial photographer, or I mean, in regards to photography, I'm doing more photography than ever.
Really?
Because of YouTube.
Okay.
Because I've got to.
Do you want to explain that?
Because I'm reviewing cameras and lenses, and I get so many cameras and lenses to review, and I take seriously trying to show people real world results. I go out there, and I go out there, with the recent Tamron lens, the 35 to 100 2.8, which I love. It's like, let's go out in the rain. Let's prove that this thing, I'll throw it on a Z8 or on a Sony A7 IV. These are two cameras that are professional cameras, should be able to handle a little bit of Melbourne rain, and we're not talking light rain. And I was out for hours, and I love it. Like, I love shooting in the rain. The location, the area that I was in, Footscray, was just looking absolutely beautiful at night in the rain. And so I shoot more than it. So before I was a YouTuber, I was probably out on average every second week shooting for myself, not counting client work. Now I'm probably on average shooting once or twice a week.
All right.
Yeah, for content.
So it's interesting that you mentioned shooting more because of your YouTube videos and things like that. You do a lot of tech reviews and you do a lot of analysis on various different products. Is it fair to say that the photos that you're taking on these shoots is more data than an actual photograph or an art piece?
No, that's the thing that I think I do differently from almost everybody, that I actually still go and shoot with the same level of care and desire. I don't see the point.
Yeah.
To throw no shade, a lot of channels just do the same thing over and over again, and it's the same test chart, and it's the same. Might be street light in the, out the front of their house or whatever. That to me is actually not what photographers do. What photographers do is they go out into the real world, and whether you're doing birds or whether you're doing street or whether you're doing portraiture or whatever, it's always different. It's never identical. And as my friend Bruce said, who's a photographer as a hobbyist, but he runs a company that sells paper for photographers, so he knows a lot about photography, but he's super keen, and he owns pretty much every camera under the sun. And he said to me, test charts, they only ever measure the quality of a lens at one distance. So when we focus, so let's say we're focusing from 50 centimeters all the way out to infinity, the quality of a lens changes through that focusing range. They can anyway, depending on how well they're made. And so when someone says, all right, I'm doing my 85mm test and I'm putting it on the Sony A7 IV, I've got it on my rig, my test chart and my rig are always the same distance for every 85mm that I shoot, they're only ever testing that lens at that one distance. And it might be 3 meters. Every time. That's interesting. And they never tested at 5 meters, and they never tested at 1 meter.
And you think that's a really, really big problem?
I won't go as far as saying it's a big problem, but what I'll say is what I'm interested in sharing with you is what does this lens do at 1 metre, 2 metres, 3 metres, 4 metres, 5 metres? What does it do when there's the sun flaring here and the rain and the sun flaring there? And what happens if there's some dust? Like the
real world
the
situations.
real world,
Yeah.
the real world, not
Okay.
some lab where you're doing the same thing. So a perfect scenario would be to do both. And I'm thinking about doing the test charts, probably not in any great, not in an exhaustive way, because no YouTuber does it in an exhaustive. Like at the end of the day, there is no YouTube channel that's actually fully scientific in the photography space.
Really?
Tell me who.
It's not quite my interest area, so
yeah,
sorry,
okay.
I don't really.
Yeah, so nobody, like for me, you would have to, if you're scientifically testing something, you would have to test, if it's a zoom lens, every millimeter of zoom at every aperture, probably at every ISO. Like if you're actually going to test it and go, this is scientifically tested. Like if you look what they do to test cars for crashing, the manufacturer has to give them, 20 cars and they crash them in every way possible to say, yes, all right, this is the rollover test, this is the front left test, this is the front right test, this is the... And it's not that, it's just that nobody's got the resources to do it. And I'm not being negative about it, but it's just nobody does it.
No, that's honest, which is fine. So it's friction. That's sort of what it is. It's like
Friction? How do you mean?
I talk about it a lot with this podcast where it's like I have to set up 2 cameras on 2 tripods. I have to line up the framing for you and me. There's a light and everything has to be plugged in. Then I have to pack that all down and then I have to load it. So there's lots of steps, and any project ever, photography, videography, podcast, whatever it may be, there's always going to be lots of steps and things you have to do. But one thing that you should be constantly thinking about is what are the points of friction? What's irritating? What's challenging? How can I improve it? And what are steps that I can change to make things easier? Because the friction will actually kill you more than anything there.
I have exactly the same concept, but I have a different name.
What do you call it?
Barriers to entry.
Okay.
What are the barriers that stop me from getting started?
That's that salesman stuff coming back.
I don't know, maybe, yeah. What are the barriers to entry here, people? All right, let's get into it.
I've heard that concept of barriers to entry a lot when it comes to starting a business.
Yeah.
And where it is and so.
Well, every little video is a little business, isn't it? Kind of,
Every video is a business.
Kind of, look, that's a bit of a throwaway comment, but in the sense of,
I like it though.
they're like a miniature thing that you've got to organise to get me here. We've got to get here. We've got to, you're starting it, and then you've got to execute it, and then you've got to package it, and then you've got to sell it. Maybe every video is a product is a better example. It's like a product that you're bringing to life. But a business is almost a product. Anyway, semantics at the end of the day. But no, I mean, there is no point embarking on this unless you've made the decision to finish it. How's that for a crazy concept?
That's interesting. Yeah.
Don't ring me unless you're going to finish it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's how I think. And one of, as a complete aside, one of the things that I've found most frustrating in my career as a creative in this country is that I think the Americans are really good at this, that it's like, yeah, man, we can do it. And everybody gets together and they make it happen. Whereas I find here, and I'm talking 4 decades of trying to, get together like-minded groups of people to just create a project because it's a good, fun thing to do. We're a little bit laid back. We're a little bit laissez-faire. Maybe we're not insane enough. I don't know. But to bring something to life out of nothing, which is what every single video is, what every single book, what every single photograph, what every single piece of music, any creation, it's an enormous amount of work. And if you're going to involve other people, then you have to commit. And the number of times that people have asked me to work with them, and then they don't finish the project, and you're just like, and I don't think people realize. And obviously, this is not what's happening here. But it happened more when I was younger. you're just sort of wasting people's time, aren't you? And it's like, what's the point of even getting into the space? So I don't know. We're talking about a lot of big concepts here, and I've just jumped all over the map, but but it actually ties everything that we're talking about together. That creative endeavor requires that discipline to finish what you've started.
Yeah.
Which is what we talked about before. That's ultimately.
There's high barriers and low barriers.
Yes.
And good friction, bad friction as well. And so
Yes.
you want to keep the good friction, but get rid of the bad friction.
Got to keep the good. You got to keep the good friction.
No, that's a bit wrong, but yeah.
It does sound a bit wrong. That's why I'm laughing. I'm trying not to laugh. It's interesting. Do you know a show called Firefly?
Yes.
Sci-fi
They're
show.
rebooting, aren't
yes.
they? Yep.
So I was just watching on YouTube Nathan Fillion talking about how they're doing it and how many friction points, barriers to entry that they had. And he went through them all. I've got to talk to Joss Whedon. We've got to talk to Fox Studios / Disney. We've got to get a showrunner. We've got to do all these different things. And yes. And then they said, how long has it taken you to pull all this together? And he goes, 5 years. And he said, everyone would do this, wouldn't they, if it was easy? But it's not easy. And it's the same. Everyone would have a YouTube channel if it was easy. Everyone would have a book, their own coffee table books, if it was easy. And it's not.
That's where value comes from. Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose.
A component of value.
Yeah, I mean, there are some things, like, the interesting thing is a fantastic photograph might come in a millisecond, but then the hard part is then you've got to work out how to share it and how to package it, how to market it, and so on. And that also is an enormously long journey. When I was 20 years old, at 19, 20, when the guy from David Jones came along and said, package it up and we'll sell it. And it did happen, by the way. I did it and they did sell them. They were on sale on David Jones for a decade and in Maya for even longer. Then Maya got bought by the Americans or the Japanese, and then they contracted all of their suppliers, and I was just this tiny little supplier. They didn't want to know about me anymore. Anyway, that's a story for another day. So in any creative endeavor, it's sometimes creating the artwork is one of the easier parts and the selling and the marketing is actually the harder part. And so I got into that really early. And I don't know where those skills came from, because I didn't go to university to learn it. I just learnt in the School of Hard Knocks.
I think so, but the School of Hard Knocks is
good. Yeah. It's great. It's a great place. And if you look at a lot of entrepreneurs, they've dropped out of, like Steve Jobs dropped out of university and just got on with it. And I think Bill Gates was the same. Like a lot of people, maybe even Zuckerberg.
Zuckerberg, he dropped out.
Yeah.
I've also talked a bit on the podcast the concept of YouTube University.
Oh yeah.
And like, where do we actually get our experiences from, and where do we actually also get our skills? And so I went to uni for 4 years and lived in Germany doing an internship for 4 months. I learned way more in the 4 months than in the 4 years.
What did you study?
I studied media communications.
Wow, exactly.
And I don't want to say what uni just because it's
so good.
Yeah, it was the best, yeah.
Oh my God, it's so good. I don't want anybody to know about it.
No, there was some really, really cool things there, and there were great conversations I had with people and really good lecturers, especially the stuff on like international cinema and some of the history things there. But it just isn't skills. None of what I've learnt there I use in making this podcast.
Yeah.
How to write an email I learnt from my call center job.
Yeah.
How to...
Look, I tell you what I loved about starting my small business at 19, 20, and whenever you needed a new skill, you would just learn it as fast as possible and apply it, and you're off and running. And, I'm terrible at learning. If you get me to learn something for no reason, I'm terrible at it. If you get me to learn something for a reason, I'm really good at it. And I was the same in high school. It was like, why are we learning about, I don't know, algebra? I'm not going to apply that anywhere in my life. I'm not going to be a scientist. I know that. So I wasn't very good at it because I couldn't see the real world application of it. Sorry to teachers and everybody out there, but that's just, everybody's brains work differently, and
This has been the Get the Shot tangents episode, and I'm going to go on a tangent related to maths.
Okay,
I was
go.
good at maths in high school.
Oh, good work.
And whilst doing the internship in Germany, there was a technology called neural radiance fields, and this related to photo scanning for like 3D models to use in VFX and stuff like that.
Wow, that's serious.
So you often run into a lot of barriers when photo scanning, because if you're to photo scan like a chair with metal legs and then a cushion on top, so you ask yourself, what's reflective about that chair? It's a trick question. Everything's reflective. The metal legs are more reflective than the cushion on top.
But it still reflects particles of light.
Yes. So neural radiance fields was this new technology that lets you be really good and accurate with it, and photo transparency into your 3D models. So if you had a fish tank that was empty and just full of water and had stuff in it, you could get a really good model of that, which you, with previous technology, couldn't be as accurate.
Right.
And so that
Maths came into that.
Maths came into that
I bet it
because
did.
I read the academic paper that talked about it, and I saw the equations, and I'm like, I actually somewhat understand this. And someone else's work was like, what's this all about? And I'm like, no, that's calculating that, and that's this, and that's redundancy. And they're like, what's redundancy? And I'm like, oh, come on.
I know what that is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, well...
So it's weird where we've talked a bit about how there's some skills in uni that I didn't really apply, and a lot of the math that I learned in high school, I don't really apply and use now. But it's strange where some things pop up.
Yep.
And so I'm expecting, I try not to be stubborn with my mindset and things like that. Who knows where I'll be tomorrow, whatever. But it's like, things will come up and re-emerge in the strangest ways. Events. There's a lot of people talking about events. People are really excited about events. We're talking about events here at Tamron and here at Blonde Robot a lot. When, 5 years ago, the prospect of having an event was a non-conversation thing.
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, yes. Well, it's been long chatted about in my world that people are after experiences less than things.
Yeah.
So events does feed into that. I suppose the issue is, how do you monetize it, right? And well, I'll leave that up to you and your events team as to how you monetize what you're doing.
The way we like to wrap up the podcast
Okay.
is by the previous guest leaves a question for you, not knowing who you are, and you don't really know who they are either.
I love that. That's what is it? The CEO. What's his name?
Dario CEO.
Yeah, he does that.
I took that from him.
Yeah, I like it.
Thank you, Stephen Bartlett.
Yeah.
So the question for you is, how did you learn about using light in your photography?
Oh, far out. That's a tough question.
Answer it however best you can.
Instinctually.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
So with all of the trial and error that you do and all of the testing that you do, lighting was the one thing that was always instinctual.
Well, you said light, not lighting.
What's the difference between light and light?
Well, light comes like, this is lighting. This is something you set up, but there's plenty of instances of there just being available light, and I think one of my best skills is getting great results out of available light. So I'm very good at working with available light.
Okay. What advice would you have for someone to maximize the use of available light?
Okay, have you got another SD card?
These Angel Bird cards are pretty good.
Oh, yeah. I love them. Yeah. Look, this is going to sound arrogant, but it's really not, because it's all I've ever done. You just have to look. You have to stop. You really have to.
I think stopping is more important than the looking part, though. Yeah.
Yeah. Look, I think, and again, I don't want to sound arrogant, because it just isn't. But I think I'm lucky that I see things really quickly. So I can be in whatever environment, like here where we are now, and go, I think that's where we're going to get a great result, and I'll already know where I want to be, and I'll know the focal length that I want and the height of the camera. I've already decided what I want to do over there. So, and interestingly, I've worked out that that's just a whole lot of quick mathematics, but I'm not actually doing any sums, but it's my brain going, I can see the fall of the light, I know how it's going to bounce around, I know what this lens will do and how it impacts the background, I know what the depth of field is going to be when I'm at one point. Like, I just can visualize it all in a split second.
Were you able to do that when you were 20 as well as now?
Yes, it's not a learned skill. It's not a learned skill, and for me, it's about that idea or concept where people go, you can see the shot. I see the shot. You know, I don't know if I'm saying that quite how people say it, but you know,
they're called get the shot. Yeah.
Well, yeah. So for me, I will walk along the street or be driving or whatever, and I see the shot, and it's based on what I'm seeing. And then the challenge was when I first started is, what lens, where do I stand, what shutter, what aperture, and so on. That was a challenge. Now all of that's just kind of automatic after all of this time. So read the question again. Do you mind?
Yep, I can.
And I'll try and bring some that background.
How did you learn about using light in your images?
Well, it seems twee to say, but without light, we don't have what we have. And then the best thing you can do is like I like the differential, the juxtaposition between light and dark, or the juxtaposition between colours. So use the light, leverage the light, amplify the light. Don't be afraid of having a blown out. You know, people. It's like get the histogram and make it's all got to. No, don't worry about the histogram. Does it look cool? It looks cool. Well, freaking take the shot.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So I've always enjoyed just like this looks great, and I've never used a histogram in my life. I don't use them.
Really?
Really, I swear. Don't need to, with film or with digital. I mean, in the digital world, what are we worried about? You can see. You can see what you're getting.
So you don't use zebra stripes or anything like that?
Never.
Damn.
Never.
I wish I had your confidence.
It's funny, I don't even think of it that way. Like let's say we're shooting in here and you get the window in the background. Well, it's a window. It should be blown out, right? Because it's a window. So it's like, okay, well, it doesn't matter to me how blown out it is. You know, there might be people that are watching this saying, no, you must have, everything must fit within the histogram. And so then you've got to bring in 5,000 lights because you've got to try and balance inside with outside so that you're not getting the zebras on the window. But it's like, it's okay. It's a window.
Yeah.
And as a human, and when we sit inside and it's sunny outside, what do we go? Oh, geez, it's bright out there, right?
Yeah, the gut feeling that you have and the instinct and intuition all sort of plays into it. And I realized this when I used to work at a clothing store. I could tell within 3 seconds if someone was going to buy something or not.
There you go.
It didn't matter if they were going to try a different size or anything like that. Yeah. 3 seconds whilst looking at it, you could just see the switch in their brain, yes or no.
Yeah.
And I think there's a similar thing that happens with photo and video. Of course, there's a handful of technical components, but as you said, over time, that stuff becomes muscle memory.
It does.
And you know what to do when and where and how.
Yeah.
But yeah, I actually agree with a lot of what you're saying around.
And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with histograms, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with keeping your exposure within the histogram. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is, don't be afraid to go outside of that as another tool to tell stories.
I love it.
Right?
Yeah.
Because right now we've got a set of tools. How do we be different? How do we think different? And how do we look different? Because we're all competing. So don't be afraid. And as long as, like, you know, let's say we're shooting you and there's a window behind you, as long as you're exposed correctly and we can still see you and you're still doing it, And we've got, we've got HDR now. We've got all, like, the world is changing so fast that I'm not even sure, we all know what the sum of all these parts are anymore, do we? And how we can bring down highlights, and now we can shoot in RAW, and oh my God, it's, well, we could always shoot in RAW. We've shot, but if you think about the beautiful red cameras that is part of Blonde Robot, and how the dynamic range keeps extending, and the Raptor has its dual dynamic range, which is now 20 plus stops. So that camera for me is my dream, because you can just set it up and you can shoot inside and outside, and it's going to get everything. And then, you know what? I'd probably go in post and then blow out the background anyway, because it's like I want it to feel like there's something amazing going on out there.
I'll get you in touch with our sales team.
Hey, I'm happy to sell red cameras for Blonde Robot and Red Australia. Let's do that.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Matt, we're gonna wrap the podcast up now. This is
Oh,
comfortably our longest one.
Woo!
We were chatting for 7 minutes before we even started whilst rolling.
Yeah.
I've learned so much. You've broadened my perspectives, and you've known the team here a while, and everyone always has great things to say about you, and it's good to properly chat with you and get to know you. And I can't wait to see what you get up to on your YouTube, and see you again in person soon. So thank you.
Good on you, Joe, and thank you for having me, and thanks everybody for watching. I hope you had fun.
Like that. If you want to find out what Matt asked next week's guests, tune in to find out. But otherwise, we will see you next week.